up, book lovers? It is G-Swizz here, and I am here today with the mid-year book freakout tag. And if you think for 1 second that I am late to doing this tag, you're wrong. I seriously don't know why it's become a thing for book community members to start posting this tag in the early part of June. Like, I understand if it was to be like the last week of June, you know, to get in somewhat early, but like early June, you have 7 months left of the year. Why are you checking in when there's more than half of a year to go? I personally like to do this tag in July because I need enough time to evaluate how my reading life was going in the first half of the year. And I'm pleased to say that now that I've gotten my first half of my reading year out of the way, I can now kind of reflect on it. I can answer these questions accurately because I'm including everything that I read between January till the end of June. Actually, for the first time in a very long time, I was tagged to do this by my friend Sash over at Sash Reads, which is exciting. Wasn't too sure whether or not people still tag people for this. Like, it's a book tag. I don't know. Some people just assume that people would do it regardless of being tagged. But thank you so much, Sash, for tagging me and considering me. Can't wait to do this tag, so I guess without further ado, let's get straight into these prompts where I pretty much gush about the books that I've read, I talk trash about some of them, and I talk about what I am very much looking forward to as well. And for those who are new to my channel and have no idea why I'm looking in this direction, my computer is on a chair here, so I'm reading the prompts off of my computer screen. So if I look down, it's because I'm reading the prompts. Prompt number 1 being the best book that you've read so far in 2023. And I always like to include full series where I can. I do have some like standalone books that really stood out to me. However, if we're talking about book series, the one that I have gained the biggest attachment to this year would definitely have to be the Deliciously Dark Fairy Tale series by K.F. Breene. Now guys, I'm not gonna lie, I have a little bit of a bias here because this is a Beauty and the Beast reimagining, and it just so happened to make me laugh. It just so happened to make me smile. It made me cry, but also I just really enjoyed my time with it. It's not the best thing ever written. It very much reminds me of From Blood and Ash. And you know what? It also kind of reminds me of Fourth Wing. But I would say if From Blood and Ash, Fourth Wing, and some sort of paranormal shifter urban fantasy romance had a baby, it would be this series. You know what? I love Fourth Wing. And if we were to talk about like one book, like one single book that really blew me away this year, it would probably be Fourth Wing because it felt full enough to satisfy me when usually series only really satisfy me. But if we're talking about full series, it would definitely be the Deliciously Dark Fairy Tale series by K.F. Breene. I just found so much comfort in this series, and Finley and Nifane are my comfort characters. The side characters in this series are also some of my comfort characters. And to top everything all off, I met K.F. Breene at Babe, and I had an amazing experience meeting her. I love that I had that space to gush to her about how much Nifane and Finley meant to me as characters and how much this series meant to me, and I pretty much told her that I was just so happy and so blown away by how she retold Beauty and the Beast. Because I'm so used to seeing the Beast character not have a good development arc, the Beast can be unlikable. It's just I'm so sick of seeing the Beast character be the antagonist of the series or be an unhealthy love interest. And in terms of what I've read so far in my life, Nifane is my favorite Beast love interest because he's the healthiest love interest. But he also very much resembles the Beast in some ways. I have a lot to say about this series. I love it so much, and I am very much excited for what K.F. Breene has in store for the rest of this world because she's planning to write spin-offs. She told me in person. I don't know if there's anything that's gonna be announced anytime soon, but I'm here for it. I told her that I'm the audience and I need it. Prompt number 2 is the best sequel that you've read so far in 2023. Now, if we are not including any of the sequels in the Deliciously Dark Fairy Tales, my answer for this prompt would be Garden of Serpents by C.N. Crawford. This is the third and the final book in the Demon Queen trials, and another series I would like to see a spin-off from, except nothing has been confirmed. So C.N. Crawford, like, you guys please confirm something soon. I don't know, no pressure, but I mean there's potential based on how this book ended. But I just adored this series so much. This is a very underrated paranormal romance series. I mean, I'm pretty sure it did its rounds back in 2021. I don't actually remember how old the series is, but it came out within recent years, but I've noticed that a lot of people have moved on to C.N. Crawford's new series, the Frost and Nectar series, and no one is really talking about the Demon Queen trials anymore, but I really want more people talking about the series. The Demon Queen trials is so good. It is a paranormal hate to love romance where the two main characters are pretty much against each other the entire series. Like, they're attracted to each other and they want to be with each other, but also they want to stop each other in their tracks. It's incredible. I haven't seen something like this since reading the Cruel Prince series, and I like the Cruel Prince series, but the Demon Queen trials, I have to say it did the romantic tension a little bit better. If we are talking about like sequels alone, oh my goodness, Garden of Serpents was an explosive finale. It just answered so many questions. I was very unsure about the direction of this romance, but guys, you need to trust the process, because as much as the first two books makes it seem like this relationship will forever be destructive, I kind of like how everything resolved itself in the end, especially because it kind of sends the message that if a couple has experienced the worst with each other, they will continue to bring the best out of each other because they know each other even more, because they have experienced each other at their worst. I love the Demon Queen trials. I love this finale. I'm gonna need everyone to read it, like now. Prompt number 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet but you want to. And for this prompt, I would like to mention an author I don't believe I've mentioned on my channel before. I would like to read Beck Michael's new release, The King's Bride. This is the first book, I believe, in a Beauty and the Beast reimagining series. Actually, I'm not quite sure if The King's Bride is the first book in a series or if it is a standalone at this point, but The King's Bride came out this year and I am looking forward to reading it because it's a Beauty and the Beast reimagining. I mean, what more could I ask for? As long as the Beast character is lovable, like, he can be a tough nut to crack, but if he's lovable to the core, then yeah, okay. Sign me up. Guys, you can tell I was burnt by ACOTAR and I was burnt by A Curse Through Dark and Lonely. I am very much looking forward to reading The King's Bride, but I also want to read the Guardians of the Maiden series by Beck Michaels. This series did not start within 2023. However, The King's Bride was published in the first half of this year, so I'm mentioning it here and I would definitely want to get to it sometime soon. Prompt number 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and that, my friends, is A Fire in the Flesh, which is the third and final book in the Flesh and Fire series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. At this point, I don't really care what's going on with Poppy and Hawk's storyline as much as I do with Sarah and Nykdos's. Like, I love Sarah and Nykdos. You know what? I need their tension back in my life because I feel like I have been craving it. I'm actually really tempted to just go back and reread the first 2 books now because the way that I'm excited for this final book in the series. I'm nervous about it because, I mean, look, after reading The War of Two Queens, of course, I'm nervous about another book in this world, but we will see how I go. I'm very much looking forward to this one and I hope that it impresses. Prompt number 5 is the biggest disappointment of 2023 so far. I have 2 for this because both of these authors I had faith in, and I hate to say it, but I really did not like these books, and both of them I find somewhat equally disappointing. Thankfully, I don't find these as disappointing as the books that I read last year, but I still find these disappointing nonetheless. The first of which being Queen of Myth and Monsters by Scarlett St. Clair. This is the sequel to King of Battle and Blood, which was a 5-star book for me. I loved King of Battle and Blood, and with first books and with relationship conflict in first books, when each partner does not trust the other person, it is very much easy to kind of give them a pass, because as I've mentioned with the Demon Queen trials, you see them at their ugliest from the very beginning, but they're only really going to get stronger from there, or at least so I thought with this series. But no, these two characters do not have a healthy relationship. They do not have a healthy and communicative relationship. They handle things poorly, and it is tough to see because after the twist in the first book, when memories come back to a character, you would kind of expect for them to be grown adults and mature about certain things because they know much more. But you know what? They don't even really know how to communicate. I am honestly being very vague about what happened in the first book, obviously, because I don't want to spoil anything. But let's just say I would expect these two main characters to be grown adults in their relationship and that they would know how to healthily communicate with each other, and no, that does not happen in this book. I, at the moment, as I'm filming this right now, noticed that the Bookish Box are finally doing their special edition for Queen of Myth and Monsters to go on sale on their website soon. It might be up for sale by the time that I post this video, but as of the moment, I'm really conflicted as to like whether or not I should continue my Bookish Box set, because even though I would like all the books to match, I really did not like this book. I do plan on continuing the series, but it's kind of a risk at this point because they were just so toxic to one another that it's kind of really hard to see this as a romantasy, honestly, even though it is a romantasy. And speaking of main characters who need to learn how to communicate properly, my second most biggest disappointment of the year so far has got to be Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. Now, I love Tessa Bailey's books. I rarely dislike a Tessa Bailey book. This book, however, Secretly Yours, was really stressful, and I personally found it very stressful because I heavily relate to Julian, who happens to have anxiety, and Hallie has no consideration for that whatsoever. This book could have also been split into two different romance novels. You have a childhood acquaintances to lover situation here where they kind of both knew each other in high school, but he doesn't really remember who she is and she remembers who he is. And then you have this secret admirer plotline where she writes him letters. And Hallie is leaving Julian to believe that he has a secret admirer when it's her, and he has eyes for her already, and he wants to get with her, but now he's conflicted because there's a secret admirer who's writing very nice things to him. He thinks he's in a love triangle because she's being dumb. Like, honestly, the secret admirer storyline could have worked if there wasn't already the establishment of her like kind of knowing who he was and then them kind of resolving that earlier on in the story. It was just so stupid. Like, it just made this story go on for longer than it should have been, and it intensified Julian's anxiety to the point that when he found out, you know what, I don't blame him for his reaction whatsoever. Hallie was being so inconsiderate. She was in the middle of interactions with him and she was thinking in her head like, oh, I should probably tell him, but maybe not. I'll just prolong this. Hallie, you are a grown adult. Act like one. I really enjoy Tessa Bailey's books, and I really loved Unfortunately Yours. I'm so happy I read Unfortunately Yours because I was going to DNF this series after reading Secretly Yours, but you can't judge a companion series by its first book. But yeah, no, I still find Hallie really annoying and very inconsiderate, and once again, she's a grown woman who did that. She's not a teenager. It would be understandable if this was a young adult premise, but no, this isn't. And Julian has communicated it very clearly that he has anxiety. Hallie was just being so inconsiderate, and I'm done with people like that. In my personal life, Hallie is one of those people that I genuinely actively avoid. Prompt number 6 is the biggest surprise of the year so far, and for this prompt I have to mention Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I would say this is the biggest surprise because this is a young adult contemporary rom-com that I loved and I think is superior. Like, this has got to be one of the best romance novels I've ever read. It is my favorite YA romance contemporary. I don't read much of them because I usually cannot relate to them. However, I found myself somewhat relating to this one. I really enjoyed how this one was structured, and I have been told by readers of Lynn Painter that her young adult books tend to be better than the romance novels that she's put out in the adult category. I'm still curious about the adult romance novels that she's written, like Mr. Wrong Number and the other one that she put out. There's a second book in that companion series. It is a very popular opinion to love Better Than the Movies the best. That's how I feel about the books that I've read from her so far. Even though I've read 2, I love Better Than the Movies. This is a 5 out of 5 star novel, and I'm really surprised I loved it as much as I do because I don't pick contemporary young adult fiction up. If I see some young adult romantasy, then I'll consider picking it up, but this one right here blew me away. Prompt number 7 is your new favorite author, and for this prompt I would have to answer with KF Brain. I do have a few honorable mentions, like I really like Lynn Painter, and I like Cian Crawford, and I definitely like a few others that I've read this year. Jay Bree is another one, but KF Brain is definitely a favorite author that I can see myself just diving far and deep into their backlist and reading everything that they've put out. I really appreciate KF Brain's signature humor. I just noticed that whenever I was scrolling through the Babe Facebook page, they would post the funniest thing ever, and their humor translates to their books very well, so I was really happy to see that when I was reading the Deliciously Dark Fairy Tale series, and I just feel like I'm gonna get that from every book that she's put out, so I'm very much looking forward to reading more by KF Brain in the future. And speaking of KF Brain, prompt number 6, who is your newest fictional crush? Nifane. It's Nifane. He is bae! Nifane is just everything I've wanted and more. And like, look, yes, I do have some honorable mentions. I really liked the love interests I met in the Tiffany Roberts books that I read this year. In terms of the ones that Tie series, my two big crushes from the Bonds That Tie have got to be Griffin and North. I love them both. But I mean, Griffin I kind of like more. He very much gives me 4 from Divergent vibes. Someone who also gives me 4 from Divergent vibes is Xaden from Fourth Wing. I have so many favorite love interests from this year, but if I was to talk about like a personal crush that I felt deeply connected to, who I wanted to see more of, and who I was kind of obsessed with, it would be Nifane from the Deliciously Dark Fairy Tale series. And what I do feel sad about when it comes to this series is that we rarely get his POV. We don't only get Finley's POV in the series, but we get the POV of some side characters. However, it is rare that we are in Nifane's head. However, I'm not too sure if that contributes to his mystery. I kind of like how mysterious he is, but he is very sweet. I am so in love with Nifane. My obsession with Nifane is unhealthy at this point, so I must stop talking about it, my goodness. And prompt number 9 is your newest favorite character. And for this prompt, I'd have to mention Ollie from the Bonds That Tie series. Ollie is just so strong, and I honestly feel like she deserves a bigger apology from all the boys and everyone who did her wrong in the series. She's just incredible, and I think throughout it all, she's just kind and loving. She is really smart as well. I mean, she has been through a lot. It takes a lot of strength and resilience to go through what she went through, but she's so kind through it all, and I really appreciated following her. And honestly, out of all characters, even though I do like the Bonds, I really appreciate Ollie, and Ollie is my favorite character in the series. She's probably the standout character of the year. I mean, I would also have to give an honorable mention to Finley as well. I really appreciate Finley from the Deliciously Dark Fairy Tale series, but if I'm talking about a character that I felt extremely emotionally attached to this year, every single time I would read from their perspective, sometimes I would tear up or I would rejoice depending on what they were going through. Ollie would definitely be that person for me. Prompt number 10, a book that made you cry. There's never only one. Let's do a montage, shall we? Those were a few at the top of my head. Prompt number 11 is a book that made you happy. And I've mentioned this book a couple of times in this video, but I will mention it for this prompt specifically, and that, my friends, is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This book made me happy because it very much reminded me of Divergent. Specifically, the first book, when the characters are doing Dauntless Initiation. The romantic dynamic between the two main love interests in Fourth Wing very much gave me Four Interest vibes as well. It felt very nostalgic, and I think that's why a lot of people really love this book. I'm not too sure if everyone wants to admit that this book is kind of like the first Divergent book. However, I was recently discussing my overall thoughts with my work colleague about this book, and they said that it made sense, so I can't entirely be wrong, right? I must be onto something. And I think that's why it made me so happy. That's why I personally like it, and I understand why it's not everyone's thing. But because Divergent was the book series that got me into reading, and it's still one of my favorite book series to this day, I can't help but love Fourth Wing because it resembles the first Divergent book. So it made me really happy to read it. I could not put the book down at a certain point when it started to feel like Dauntless Initiation, and I personally appreciate it for that aspect. So even though there are moments in this book that made me kind of sad, it made me happy at the end of the day because it reminded me of the first Divergent book. Therefore, I felt nostalgic. Prompt number 12 is your favorite book to movie adaptation that you've seen so far this year. I am caught between two. These are very much adaptations of graphic formats. They're not novel to movie or TV adaptations. However, I have one manga adaptation and one comic book adaptation. First, I'll start off with the comic book adaptation. I'm pretty sure some of you guys might have watched Across the Spider-Verse recently. If you haven't, go see it. It's incredible, and I very much appreciate how they adapted Gwen Stacy's backstory. I just remember reading those comics, and I've always kind of wanted to see it on screen, and when I finally got to see it on screen, I started to tear up because I just felt so nostalgic. And I was just so thankful that the creative team behind this movie did her story justice, and I definitely appreciated the other elements of the movie. I appreciated all the Easter eggs. Into the Spider-Verse was my favorite film ever for a good few years. The only time that that was dethroned was when I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once. I only watched that film this year and I sobbed. You know what? Everything Everywhere All at Once is still my favorite movie to a degree, but I'd have to say it's my favorite standalone film. Whereas like if I'm talking about films in a franchise, I think my new favorite film has got to be Across the Spider-Verse. It just had so much emotional weight to it. I loved the first movie so much, but this second movie just meant so much to me, and I have not been able to stop talking about this movie. I can't shut up about it. I love that my two favorite films of all time were caused by a bagel. That's all I'm gonna say. And the second adaptation that I have to mention has got to be like the Demon Slayer adaptation. We're currently in the Swordsmith arc. Because I'm filming this right now, I am not caught up on it. I need to continue on. But I went to the movie theater screening of the first episode, and what I loved about that first episode was the introduction to the villains. That scene was so chilling, and it was so perfect to watch in cinemas. I understand why people felt like they were scammed, because the finale of the second season was being shown with the first episode of the new season, and people thought that it was an actual like new movie that was introducing them to a new arc, when it wasn't. But I ended up going to a special screening. I was actually invited by Crunchyroll. Thanks so much, Crunchyroll, because I'm so happy I received a ticket to that, because watching that opening scene to the Swordsmith arc was just incredible in cinemas. Surround sound and everything. I immediately just wanted to look up the score. I needed more from that moment. And I happened to watch it a month before the season started streaming on Crunchyroll. So it was very much special. But I just do have to say that I think based on my first initial reaction of that episode alone, it was just so perfect for me, and it just brought back so many fond memories of me reading the Demon Slayer manga. And I can't wait to watch more anime adaptations. I have not been watching much anime as of recently, and I think it's because that when you are just really immersed in manga, you are just so used to following the story at your own pace that when you watch it in an anime, sometimes it feels pretty slow, or it just doesn't go the way that you planned it to go as you were reading the manga. And so I noticed that a lot when I started reading manga and then watching the anime adaptation afterwards. It just felt very different. However, with Demon Slayer, I kind of appreciate the pacing, and I very much appreciate the animation. The animation is incredible, and the score is magnificent. The second last prompt of this tag is the most beautiful book that you bought / received within the year so far. And you know, as I usually do, I have a few. First of all, I've got to mention a set that I only received in January of this year, that I actually ordered in January of last year, I believe. And that, my friends, is the Zodiac Academy set, or at least the first 4 books in the Zodiac Academy set by the Bookish Box. And you know what? Initially, I was very nervous about how the set would turn out, because I heard that it was going to be a cutout, and I was like, no. Like, I thought that this was going to be a very dangerous thing for them to do, because it is very easy for that to bend over. However, the set came to me in very good condition. I'm actually not too sure whether or not these were shrink wrapped at the time that I unboxed them initially. They could have been, but I'm really happy that they've remained in tip-top condition. And I also love the rest of the features. Like, I love these end pages right here, and I really like the naked hardback. I also really like the spines here. That is like really cool as well. Yeah, I think that they did an excellent job with this set. I was really nervous about it to begin with, but I wanted this set over buying the original paperbacks. So I'm really happy that I have this set. It looks very pretty. The second special edition set I've got to give a shout out to has got to be Fairy Loot Crescent City. And yes, I do like the Illumicrate ones, but I like what Fairy Loot did with the set better, personally. So here we have a slipcase. Check those pages out. I love those pages. I love the spine. The spine looks really cool, and this cover just looks really awesome. And even though we don't have the characters on the main cover, I'm actually really happy that they put the effort in to update the cover for the Fairy Loot editions. And then we have the end pages. I love the character art on the end pages. Look at that. So pretty. And then here's the naked hardback. We have Bryce here. And Hunt is on the House of Sky and Breath naked hardback as well, which is really cool. I just really love how they customized this edition. Here we have my favorite quote, "Through love, all is possible." And then here we have Hunt and Rune as well. And I think my only gripe with this edition is that there's no reverse dust jacket art. I really think that Fairy Loot could have come through with reverse dust jacket art. But then again, Bloomsbury seem really strict when it comes to the special editions they put out. I mean, it's frustrating, but I mean, what can you do, really? But yeah, I definitely had to give a shout out to this set because it looks so pretty. Last but certainly not least, one of the prettiest books I've received this year has definitely got to be Bewitched by Laura Falasa in the Fabled Twilight edition. edition. Look at how beautiful the slipcase is, first of all, and then here we have a quote from the book on the back of the slipcase, and then as we take this beautiful book out of its slipcase, we have this beautiful design. It's just so gorgeous. It's so different from the original book design, but I really appreciate it. It's just so pretty. And even if it wasn't like Bewitched in general, I would still want this book on my shelf. And Bewitched just so happens to be one of the best books that I've read this year. Even though I haven't used it for another prompt, definitely one of the best books I've read this year, and Laura Falasa is one of my favorite authors of all time. This book is just so pretty. I'm really happy I have it, not just because I'm a huge Laura Falasa fan, but because it's a pretty book and I just love looking at it. It's adorable. And the final prompt of this tag is, what books do you really need to get to by the end of the year? I'm sorry, but is this really an answer to a TBR prompt on my channel if I'm not going to talk about these 3 series in particular? I am going all in with the romantasy here. I just really need to push myself to complete all 3 of these series this year. The first out of the bunch being the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy, but it's most likely going to be the final series that I'm going to complete because the final book actually comes out in December. So it might just be one of the last books I complete at the end of the year, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, this series will be one of the best series that I've read this year. I have a feeling that it will definitely end up on my favorites list, but that depends on whether or not the finale is good. The series just needs to finish off in a satisfactory way, a way that this book series can be satisfactory enough for me to put it on my top 23 of 23, is for the protagonist Oren to hopefully either just have a happy life at the end of it or to rule a kingdom. I'm not too sure where this series is going to go. I've only read the first book, but my prediction is that that is going to happen, and if it doesn't happen, I will be devastated. This series better not end in disaster, because if it does, then it will have just been a waste of time and energy even waiting for these books to come out, you know? Secondly, The War of Lost Hearts. This series has probably been on my TBR for the least amount of time compared to the other 2. However, it is one that I've mentioned in recent days that I want to get to, and I'm hoping to get to it in the second half of the year because I'm just trying to find my new favorite romantasy series, and I'm really hoping that at least within this next quarter I can get to the series. I have been putting this series off this year, and I don't want to do that any longer because I keep on telling myself that in order for me to read The Serpent and the Wings of the Night, I will need to read Carissa Broadbent's backlist. These are the rules that I'm setting for myself. No one else is setting them for me, but I've made that rule. So I have to get to the series sometime soon, and I'm hoping to get to it hopefully within the quarter, but one thing's for sure, I want to read it before the end of the year because I want a good top 23 list. At this point, I don't see myself making a top 23 of 2023, and I have to get myself there. Because yes, while I have a solid few favorites, I don't have enough to make up a top 23 list yet. And the final of the 3 book series that I have to mention for this prompt is Savage Lands. This is pretty shameful. I may have just put it in multiple TBRs, but one thing's for sure, I wanted to read this book series in the lead up to the end of last year because I wanted to have some solid favorites. And look, I had some solid favorites of last year. I loved my reading year last year, and you know what? I read the Bargainer series last year, and that series is one of my favorite series of all time. So I'm not mad at myself for the reading that I accomplished last year. However, I am mad at myself for constantly putting this book series on my TBR, on multiple TBR videos last year, and telling myself that I was going to read it before the end of the year, and that never happened. So it has to happen this year, and if it does not happen this year, I will be so frustrated with myself because I've had this book series on my shelf for quite some time. I have the hardbacks. I am collecting the Arcane Society editions. I really just need to get a move on. So I guess that's going to be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to stay to the end of the video, leave me the pink heart emoji with sparkles. And if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social media. I'm at GSwizzleBooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at GSwizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double.